Hi friends, it's Jessie here. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. I am here to check in after my first week back to budgeting in a very long time. I took quite a long hiatus from it, and we're gonna talk all about how the week went. So if you missed my video last week where I talked about why I sort of fell off from budgeting and how I plan to get back on track, I promised you guys I'd be checking in every week, as often as possible anyway, talking about everything I spent in the categories that I'm tracking, which I have listed here, and it is my goal to get my credit card paid back down. We were completely credit card debt free, and then we moved and life happened and shopping happened, and needless to say, we are back in debt and we are gonna fix it. So this last week was difficult for sure, but something that I failed to mention when I filmed this setup in my little paycheck budget system here was that we actually, both my husband and I, had trips that we were going on over the last weekend, a lot of which had already been paid for and budgeted for. So when you see me track my expenses here, you're gonna see a gap in the days that I'm tracking, and that is because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of last week, I was actually in Chicago at a supernatural convention, which was the greatest time of my life. I had so much fun. And while I was in Chicago, my husband was on a camping trip, a canoe trip with his mom and our son Robert. So we both had separate things going on, separate things that we had kind of set money aside for, saved for, and had already paid for portions of prior to budgeting. So I decided not to include those things in this budget. That's a separate budget, so that will kind of explain the gap in the tracking here when I start going through all of my expenses and everything. That also, I feel like, made things a little bit easier in terms of sticking to these numbers because, you know, on Saturday when I was in Chicago and I decided I was starving and needed to eat out, I didn't have to stress about this budget because I had money already kind of set aside and like bookmarked for that specific thing. So realistically, we only had like 5 days in this week that we tracked with this budget. And I gotta say, had it been the full 7, I don't know that we would have been able to stick to it quite as well as we did. But all of that to say, I'm gonna track all of my expenses, everything that I spent in these categories: grocery, eating out, miscellaneous, my husband's spending, and my spending. It was a total of $650 that I had budgeted. So we're gonna see how closely I managed to stick to that. I've got all my highlighters here. We're gonna do some categorizing and whatnot. We're gonna work here in this expense tracker. By the way, if you are looking at these worksheets and saying, wow, those are pretty, I wish I had worksheets like that, I've got good news for you. You can get them if you join my channel membership at the Budget Buddy or Budget Bestie tier. I have these available as digital downloads. All of the information will be listed if you click the link down below that says, click here to join. And I'm losing my sunlight. So let's just go ahead and get into the expense tracking. I will set this off to the side for now. We will come back to it and check in with that after a while. For now, I'm gonna zoom in a touch to try to make the best out of this lighting situation that I can. Try brightening it up a little bit, see if that helps. Hopefully it's not too bright, and let's get started. So the week that we are tracking for is September 2nd through the 8th, but as I mentioned, some of those days my husband and I were both out of town, so essentially the 5th, 6th, and 7th, you're not really gonna see too much written down here. All right, so let's start with the 2nd. The very first thing I did when we got paid in terms of this budget was to pull cash out for my husband. So my husband and I both have a certain amount of money we are trying to stick to in terms of our personal spending. I like to do my husband's in cash because it is so much easier to just hand him the cash that I have allotted for him and let him manage it. And that way I don't have to try to like micromanage his expenses. I don't have to like hunt him down and ask him what he spent, you know, $7 on here or whatever. It's just, I give him the cash and I count it as spent. He can do whatever he wants with it. So I went ahead and took the full $100 that I had budgeted for him and I pulled it out in cash and I gave it to him. So that was the very first thing I did. The second thing I did was go ahead and get groceries for the family, and I have to tell you, this was tough because we have been very loosey-goosey with our budget in terms of groceries for months now. There's a lot of things that we regularly purchase that are more expensive, things like electrolyte packets, protein drinks, energy drinks, sodas, convenience things. It was pretty difficult to stick to the budget this week, I'm not gonna lie. I think it'll get easier as time progresses, but I did a Walmart order. The category here is grocery, and I spent pretty much every single penny of our budget here in one go. It was $284.40. Shocking, I know. When you really start to keep track of all of the spending and just how much you're spending, it's really, really eye-opening. Something that I really missed about budgeting is actually seeing what we're spending, because let me tell you, the number of times it's been like death by 1,000 cuts because we're spending $5 here and $10 there, especially with this grocery shopping. We were sometimes shopping, you know, 3 or 4 times a week to pick up odds and ends, and it wasn't that much. You know, it was like a $50 trip here or, you know, $35 there, but when you add it all up, it was a lot. So what I really tried to do this week was get everything I needed in one trip, not make multiple trips to the grocery store. Like I said, I spent pretty much our entire budget, which I'm going to try to avoid happening in the future, because had we gotten through the week and realized by Friday that we needed something else, we definitely would have gone over budget. But because, like I said, we were out of town on the weekend, that didn't really happen. So it worked out this week, but in the future I'm gonna try to, yes, do just one big shopping trip towards the beginning of the week, but save a little bit back just in case, you know, we get to Friday and we run out of milk or whatever. I told myself before I sat down to film I wasn't gonna ramble too much. I feel like that's a fail, but let's keep going. Also on the second, the water filter on our refrigerator indicated that it needed to be replaced. So I did not anticipate that. Luckily, we set aside some money for miscellaneous expenses. So that is where I took this from, and it was $20.82. That's what I paid anyway. I happened to have a little bit of a credit on a gift card from Amazon, so I used a portion of that to cover part of the filter, and then I just paid the difference, which was $20.82. All right. On the 3rd, we went to a soccer game. My son is a senior in high school. He's on the varsity soccer team. This was an away game, and the school that was hosting the game actually did not charge admission to get into the game, so we didn't have any expense there, but I did buy 50/50 tickets because I wanted to go ahead and support their soccer program. The coach at the school that we were up against is actually an old coach of my oldest son, Robbie, so it was really good to see him and support his new program. So yeah, we spent $5 on 50/50 tickets, and then we also hit up the concession stand, and if I didn't already mention, I took this out of our miscellaneous budget as well, and it was $10 for concessions, so $15 total spent at the soccer game, which we won, so that was good. All right, on the 4th, we were all running in different directions and we all ate out various places. Eric and I had Chipotle. So we took that out of our eating out budget. And the amount that I spent there was $27.51. And this was good because I was able to get a huge burrito bowl that actually lasted me for dinner that night and then lunch the next day. So I thought that was pretty darn good. Robbie, my oldest son, did not want Chipotle, so he just ran up and grabbed himself a couple slices of pizza from the corner little pizza place here. And I paid for that, which was $8.24. Austin was out and about doing other things with his friends. I think he maybe ate dinner at his girlfriend's. Truthfully, I do not even know, but he did not ask me for money to eat out, so there you go. Maybe he used his own money. He does have a job, so when he's out and about occasionally, he'll just get his own food or whatever. So I didn't have to pay for that, so that's not coming out of my budget. Also on the 4th, I placed an order at Naturium for a skincare product that I wanted to try, and that I took out of my spending money. My typical, like, shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, that sort of thing, I will typically take out of this grocery budget, which is essentially covers anything I can buy at Walmart, right? So it's our groceries for the week and any household items, that sort of thing. But if I have extra things I want to try or something new or fancy or whatever, I take it out of my spending money. So that's what I did here, and the cost was $21.47. All right, on the 5th, Eric and I went our separate ways. He went on his canoe trip. I went on my Chicago trip. Austin actually stayed home. He had a soccer tournament while we were gone, so we were all doing different things. And all of that was a separate budget, so nothing on the 5th. The one thing that I will include here in my budget on the 6th, because I didn't get Austin dinner this night that Eric and I had Chipotle and Robbie had pizza, he hit me up and said, hey, can I go out to dinner with my friend? So I paid for that, and they went to Chipotle. It's a family favorite of ours, and so that came out of Eat Out, and the amount there was $28.98. Okay, then, you know, still in Chicago, still on the canoe trip. We came home Sunday, and then the next day was Monday, the last day of tracking here, and there was a soccer game at home. So the first thing we have here was admission tickets. They're $7 a piece. My husband and I went. Robbie actually joined us later, but he came after halftime, so he didn't have to pay for a ticket, luckily. I took this out of miscellaneous as well. Like I said, they're $7 each, so that was $14 for my husband and I. And then after the game, Austin and his friends were going out, and I decided to go ahead and give him some cash to go out with. And I actually took that out of my spending money because, you know, it was the end of the week. I had only spent a little bit. I had it. I wanted to gift it to him, so I gave him $40 in cash. All right, so that is all of the spending outside of what we spent on our respective trips. So if we list out the categories here, we had Eric, grocery, miscellaneous, eating out, and my spending. So now we need to get totals. So let me pull up my calculator here. And I have some highlighters off to the side. I'm just gonna kind of pick at random. Some of these have labels on them, which you can't see because I set my camera settings a little bit different. There you go. But we're just gonna ignore them and just kind of go with whatever feels right. So for Eric, it's real easy. Gave him $100 cash. So just one line to keep track of, easy peasy. All right, grocery is the same, so let's do this pink for grocery this week. And that was just the one category. Again, don't need my calculator for this. $284.40. Miscellaneous next. So let's do this one. So for miscellaneous, we had $20.82 plus 5 plus 10 plus 14 for a total of $49.82. All right, and then for eating out, let's do this yellow. We had Chipotle for $27.51. We had pizza for $8.24. We had Chipotle again for $28.98 for a total of $64.73. And then last but not least, we have my spending, which was $21.47 and $40 for a total of $61.47 this week. So now all we have to do is get a grand total here. So 100 plus 284.40 plus 49.82 plus 64.73 plus 61.47. We spent a grand total of $560 with 42 cents. So now that we have that figured out, I can fill in my paycheck budget with these numbers. So we didn't put anything into fixed expenses because we're not tracking fixed expenses here on my channel anymore. We did start out with a total of $800 though, so I will put that there. So for grocery, I budgeted $300. We spent $284.40. For eating out, I spent $100. We spent $64.73. For miscellaneous, I budgeted $50. I spent $49.82. My spending, I budgeted, Eric's spending, I budgeted $100. I gave him $100. My spending, I budgeted $100 and I spent $61.47. So we were under budget in all the categories. As I mentioned, I'm not sure that would have been the case had we had to include the weekend in there, but for this week, I'm gonna count it as a win. I'm just gonna add these up. I know I already added them up here, but just to double check my math, if I put it through the calculator again and I get the same number, then yay. 560.42, okay. So that means then that we're gonna be able to pay extra to city, which is fantastic. So of the $650 I budgeted for variable expenses, we spent $560.42. That means we are going to pay an additional $89.58. And I am going to be able to pay the $150 for city. I did not do that yet, but I do intend to. So total for our credit card this week, because we stayed under budget here, we're actually going to be able to put $239.58 towards city, which is awesome. That's a win for sure. So let's just fill this in here. We started out with $800. Nothing for fixed expenses. $560.42 for variable, nothing for sinking funds. $239.58 for city. So let's get a total, make sure that all of my math is right. If you've watched me for any length of time, you know that I'm not great at math, so it should be 0, and indeed it is. That's our zero-based budget, and that means that I was able to put $239.58 to my city card this week, which is amazing. All right, so that was this week. Let's go ahead and turn the page and figure out the budget for next week. Spoiler alert, I think it's gonna be largely the same as what we just did because it worked out so well. So, things I have on the agenda this week that will affect my budget, 2 soccer games and a soccer tournament. So because I'm essentially doing all of our soccer stuff in the miscellaneous category, I might shift things a little bit and up my miscellaneous category since we have those 3 things. Plus Eric and I think are gonna go to the camper this weekend. And I might shift things a little tiny bit just for that reason. But we are still going to budget with $800. That worked out so well last time. Why rock the boat? So let's get down here to this variable category. So we said grocery. We did $300 last week. Let's stick with that. Eating out. We did $100 last week. I'd like to stick with that again. What else did we say? Miscellaneous. Let's do $100 there as well. And then for Eric, I will do 100 as usual, and for myself, I will do 50. And I'm totally fine with that, you guys, don't worry. I don't want to lower the amount that I can send to city. I could do that if I wanted to continue to spend $100 here. I could just, you know, set aside 100 for city instead, but my priority right now is paying down the city card, so I'm fine with taking a little bit less. So that is $650 total for our variable expenses, and that means then that I can plan to put $150 towards city, right? $650 plus $150 is that $800. So pretty easy peasy, nothing too different from last week. Same numbers, just kind of shifted around a little bit. So 800 minus 650 for variable expenses, minus 150 for extra debt. That is a zero-based budget. So we will see how I do this next week. It's gonna be more difficult because we will have that weekend in there, and that's when we tend to spend the most. But my strategy for this week is to spend less on groceries right out of the gate. We did stock up on quite a few things last week, so I should be okay to do that. And we'll just kind of see how it goes. Hopefully I can stick to this budget and put this $150 towards my city card. I do intend to sit down with you guys and go over how much credit card debt I have amassed over the last few months. I just gotta find the time to do that. So that'll be coming probably closer to the end of the month. But if you like this video, will you please give it a thumbs up? Don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying really hard to get back to posting videos on a regularly scheduled basis. So just bear with me. If you want the worksheets, join my channel membership. I would love to have you there. There are also tiers of my channel membership just for like early access to these videos you're watching. So, you know, check that out if you're into it. If not, no worries. Just make sure if you haven't yet subscribed that you do that. I'd love to have you here, and I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye, friends.